Hello, and welcome to Champions of Rural America. I'm Christina Loren. Sometimes the gap between the so-called flyover states and the Beltway can be vast, but your voices are being heard in our nation's capital, and we want to highlight how it's happening. From job creation to fueling local economies, the mining industry remains a pillar of strength for rural America. But it's not just tradition driving it forward, it's innovation. We begin with the remarkable strides in technology that have revolutionized the industry, and hear why lawmakers are working to protect the invaluable contribution of the American miner. At the very core of our global economy lies the mining industry, as precious metals and minerals extracted from the earth power our modern world with computer chips and batteries. And rocks that are sourced from the earth also play a major role in food production.
Look, your farmers and ranchers know the key ingredients that we need. I call them ingredients or compounds, they're elements. Potash, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Those are three basic compounds that we need to grow America's food. And, from day one, this administration has declared war on the mining of this. When we saw the Ukraine war break out, we knew right away that potash was going to be a challenge. The United States imports about 95% of their potash. If we take a look at phosphorus, we import at least 40% of the phosphorus into our country as well. This administration has slapped tariffs on that phosphorus, driving up the cost of phosphorus for Kansas farmers. So quite a challenge out there in rural America.
We have in this country almost every mineral on the critical mineral list, but we don't necessarily have the ability to process it through the mineral engineering or the metallurgy. So most of the issues that come up are not resource issues at all. We have the material in the ground in this country.
But it doesn't do the country any good to just have them in the ground sitting there. If we're going to move ahead on EV, if we're going to be competitive globally, we need to make sure that critical minerals is a part of the supply chain. Well, critical minerals for the EV world are as what they're called. They're critical, right? But critical minerals also look at military hardware, things that we need to run our economy. And look, the statistic is this. We would have to have a 2,000% increase for 20 years just to catch up on the demand today.
But right now, we're not really ready as a country to commit fully to electric vehicles based on the fact that we cannot produce the metals that we need, or we cannot necessarily import everything we need without risk.
Things like lithium, which is obviously soda ash, which is also critical for electric vehicle batteries and lithium batteries. Silver, which is used in microchips, semiconductors, all of those things. Rare earth elements, even something like talc, which most people think of as like baby powder, but it's actually used in the bumper of electric vehicles because it makes them lighter. We have a lot of these minerals here, and we should be using them here, but we're still relying too heavily on places like Russia and China for these. And the past few years since COVID should have shown us the danger of relying on those long, vulnerable supply chains.
One of the issues that we're continuing to see is an effort by the administration to pursue mineral projects, to fund and support mineral projects from nations other than our own, from foreign sources. Further deepening our increasing import reliance on foreign sources of minerals instead of actually developing domestic resources.
The average mining permit in the United States is like 8 to 9 years. In Canada, it's 2 years. So we need an open mind about mining in the United States. Look, we mine cleaner than any other nation in the world does. So we need these critical elements, whether it's for agriculture or for batteries.
It seems like sometimes the administration, if it's lithium, they're willing to have a permit, overnight. But if it's an other mineral, or if it's fossil fuel extraction, you can never get a permit. So the government should be fair in how it addresses, there's a place to mine and there's a place not to mine. Let's make those decisions quicker for the benefit of us all. mining techniques and technology have changed over the course of time. They no longer run up the riverbeds you see commonly in Montana, the scars of years past. Now mining looks at it, they oftentimes they reclaim the land better than what it was. In coal, that's certainly the case as the topsoil gets mixed around. Oftentimes when they put it all back together, it's more productive land than it was before the mine.
This mine was played out kind of in the 50s, 60s, and they donated it to the university to use it as a teaching and research facility.
If you have a light that's round, there's a rubber button on top.
Developing our nation's natural resources, critical minerals, is absolutely necessary for national security. And here at the University of Arizona, at this mining facility, it is slated to be the world-class leader in mining education.
So we mine about 70% of the copper in the United States here in Arizona, and we do believe it's critical. But autonomous mining is an area, obviously high-tech, where our students are applying their knowledge and skills.
Today we just wrapped up at the mine. Very educational and helpful, and things that I can bring back to Guam and see the importance of helping our island as well.
The university here in Arizona is doing a fantastic job. The area that I represent in northeastern Minnesota is called the Iron Range. We mine the taconite that makes over 80% of America's steel. And now we have the biggest copper nickel find in the world up there. And so we can, if we have the political will and have leaders that understand if it's not mined or it's not grown, it doesn't exist. And one of the things that we talked about today is the United States. We rely on other foreign adversarial nations for our critical minerals, and we do that because we choose to, and that's unacceptable. It's putting our nation at risk. We have learned a lot through COVID, and to allow adversarial nations to control our critical minerals and our destiny is simply unacceptable. When we have those minerals, and we are blessed to have those minerals right here in our country, so we can mine domestically using the best labor, best technology, best environmental standards right here in America.
The hindrances to developing minerals are many. Three of them that come to mind are, first of all, permitting is way out of control, okay? It's gone beyond the point of being useful. The other one is the withdrawal of many federal lands, which are mineral rich. We no longer have access to them. And then third, we see more and more lawfare. We see where frivolous lawsuits are being filed to tie up mining.
The current administration has made it very clear in many of their efforts that they are trying to seal off millions of acres of public lands. A good example is the Bureau of Land Management's their land rule that they are finalizing. They specifically list in there that they will not permit certain activities that they claim harm ecosystem resilience, quote unquote, and they specifically list mining as such an activity. They single out mining as something they don't want to do. This, of course, makes no sense because all of the administration's own green energy goals cannot be met without a supply of these minerals.
We absolutely, without a doubt, need to bring back the former U.S. Bureau of Mines, okay? 28 years ago, we foolishly closed the Bureau of Mines, and today we're the only G20 country in the world, the only industrial country in the world without a Bureau of Mines. And from that day in 1996 to this day, our mining industry has trended downward with no leadership at the federal level.
Mining in the U.S. is one of the most highly regulated industries, quite frankly, in the entire world. We are governed by a myriad of environmental and safety laws and regulations that really dictate, what we can and cannot do at all times within the industry.
Mining is upstream in the supply chain. The only thing further upstream is exploration. In the rare earth mine in Southern California, it's called Mountain Pass, one of the largest rare earth mines in the world. That ore is mined and put in super sacks and sent to China for processing. And then they process it and send it back to us. I mean, that's probably not a good idea, but that's what's happening. You want to have the capability next to the mine or down the road or down the rail to be able to process the ore, and then it would go to metallurgy. So you have to have those steps in the supply chain.
We have the resources. We understand the technology of what to do. This is something the Western Caucus Foundation and both the House and Senate Western Caucuses talk about and fight for on a daily basis here in Washington, D.C.
Coming up, beauty out of balance. How congressional leaders are working to manage surging wild horse populations. Welcome back to Champions of Rural America. I'm Christina Loren. There's still a corner of the American West where wild horses roam free. But in states like Utah and Nevada, populations are multiplying so rapidly that the majestic animals are having trouble finding places to graze. The Bureau of Land Management is directed to humanely capture wild horses and burros and then set them up for adoption. But this can be an incredibly costly process, requiring helicopters and long chases by air. That's why members of the Western Caucus say there are better, cost-effective, and more humane ways.
So we have this reality that we have to manage horses. We also have this reality that we're dealing with arid rangelands that can be quickly harmed if they're overpopulated. And right now, they're way overpopulated. When horse populations get too big, it definitely impacts farmers and ranchers, mostly ranchers. They have grazing rights in these same areas where there are horse management areas. Even if we removed all livestock from these ranges, the horse overpopulation is an issue. So it's not just a competition between ranchers and horses. Having an unhealthy rangeland is bad for both. So we've got to find a way of balancing all of these interests, and I don't think we're doing a great job of that right now.
Is there a more cost-effective way than what they're currently doing, the BLM, to get these wild horses adopted? Is there a better way to handle the population sizes?
Well, first of all, you used the word early on, overpopulation, which is absolutely accurate. I've got a saying that everything that gets uber politicized gets ruined. The topic of wild horses has been uber politicized. Let's start with some basics. Nobody hates horses. You know, did you watch Gunsmoke? Did you watch Bonanza? Did you watch, the Clint Eastwood Westerns? Nobody hates horses. However, we manage everything that has an impact on the resource in the West, okay? Everything. We manage deer populations, we manage predator populations, we manage people impacts, we manage cow impacts, we manage everything. No disrespect, but the fact that we say, but we can't manage horses that have an impact on it, when you're closing BLM allotments to people who are totally in compliance because of the horse overpopulation, especially in eastern Nevada, there's nothing to eat. You can't turn the cows out. The horses have done what they do if you let them. And so when you say, is there a better way? I don't think there's a silver bullet. I think it's a combination of things. But just rounding them up, sending them somewhere in the Midwest to take care of them, feed them, vet them until they die is not working.
People love wild horses. It's a really emotional issue for a lot of people. If you've ever tried to do anything here in Washington, D.C. on horse policy, you'll know that horse people really love wild horses. So gathering them up, putting up for an adoption seems like the best solution. The problem is it's not a large market. So we can't get as many horses adopted as we have to remove from the range. So it's a great idea, but the reality of it so far has been that it's not big enough to be able to help solve the problem. This isn't a problem that's going to solve itself. It's not one that's going to be solved in 2 or even 3 years. It's one we've got to work on over time.
Coming up, as American ag land becomes a foreign investment magnet, how members of the Western Caucus are working to keep our fertile farm ground from falling into the wrong hands. American farmland has become a prime target for foreign investors, but these investments could carry heavy consequences for national security. That's why members of the Western Caucus included measures in the fiscal year 2024 Agriculture Appropriations Bill to keep American farm ground from falling into the wrong hands.
The reason that it is so important for us to be aggressive with China on the ag issue is that this is a basic necessity.
These last few years have seen China steal U.S. intellectual property, hack critical cybersecurity and related infrastructure, weaponize agricultural trade, and acquire American farmland at an alarming rate.
Here in Washington, D.C., the debate over foreign ownership of agricultural land has been heated for years. But recently, we've seen more bipartisan support at the state and federal level for increased limitations.
I've said before, I don't want to wake up 5 or 10 years from now and think, oh, we should have done something. I think we can take actions now that will prevent China and Russia and North Korea and Iran, other countries that we deem as not friendly to the United States, from really gaining a foothold in something that's so important. If production and manufacturing of agricultural products is controlled by someone who's not our friend, that puts us in a very precarious national security situation. We scored a big win last week through the Agricultural Appropriations Bill, able to get some language in there that really begins to improve the system of oversight, and I'm very happy about that.
As a farmer, I can understand why you're so concerned. USDA has had a hard time, as we know, keeping track of some of these foreign ag purchases. Also, we know that around military bases, some of our military bases, we've had purchases.
Good point. That's exactly right. We're seeing more incidents of that. In defense, I should also say, of USDA, Department of Agriculture, we really haven't had a great system of reporting foreign purchases of agricultural assets. So we're working toward building that system, increasing the accountability, increasing the oversight, and the participation by the Department of Agriculture. And so passing this language that we got into the appropriations bill, well, I will go a long way towards that. It will create an office within USDA with that responsibility to oversee and review purchases around the country. But some people were very critical of our ideas of prohibiting agricultural land purchases like China or anybody else. And so we'll see. I'm sure there'll be more that has to be done, but this is a great first step.
Coming up, welcoming spring with a spectacular display of color. How Washington, D.C.'s iconic cherry blossom trees were etched into history. Welcome back to Champions of Rural America. I'm Christina Loren. Every spring, an enduring link between American history and agriculture blooms anew in our nation's capital. But there's a beautiful story behind how the historic trees ended up in D.C. to begin with. Here in our nation's capital, the backdrop steals the spotlight for 2 weeks as the iconic cherry blossoms come to life, marking the beginning of spring.
You have some of these massive trees that are 70, 80, 100 years old, ringing some of the most iconic buildings in the country.
How did they get here originally?
Trees were originally a gift from the people of Tokyo, Japan, to the people of the United States, a gift of 3,000 trees in 1912. We have since reciprocated with gifts of dogwood trees to the Japanese people. They have given additional gifts over the years, and it's really probably one of the most famous international gifts of friendship in the United States.
Tell me a little bit about what growth stage we're in here and what's to come.
We start with a green bud. We then advance to florets visible when the bud starts to break into individual blossoms. The florets then grow, that's florets extended. The color is peduncle elongation. We'll next go to what's called puffy white as the petals start to come out, and then finally peak bloom.
And then how long does that last?
If the weather cooperates, if we have cool temperatures, if we don't have high wind and heavy rain, we'll get a week or 10 days out of the blossoms. But yeah, severe weather, warm temperatures will speed the blossoms to leaves on the tree.
What's interesting is in Georgia, they have a cherry blossom festival, but this area is known around the world.
Macon, Georgia's trying to, they've got more trees maybe, but they don't have the backdrop of the Washington Monument, the Jefferson Memorial, and the history behind those trees. So there are other places that make claims to being larger cherry blossom festivals, but this is the original. This is the best.
Do you have a favorite tree in the park?
we love all our trees equally, as they say. There are a couple of trees that are sort of special. We have one tree that, for whatever reason, comes out about 2 weeks before the rest of them. It's called the indicator tree.
Each month, we like to put the spotlight on a member of the Western Caucus to find out what fuels their passion to serve rural America. This month, it's U.S. Representative from the 2nd District of Iowa, Marionette Miller Meeks.
You know, when you're from a large family of 8, neither parent having gone to college, and you get burned at 15 and decide you want to be a doctor, and you leave home at 16, been financially independent since then, started at community college, decide if I go into nursing, I can work at night to put myself through medical school, so I can start 16, community college, working, enlist in the Army when I'm 18, you just keep working and going to school, get a degree in nursing, a master's in education, ended up spending 24 years in the military, both active duty and reserve, and went from enlisted to retire as a lieutenant colonel. And then I was able to go to medical school and went to one of the best programs in the country. My job prior to coming to Congress was as a physician, as a doctor. And I'm an old school doctor, so that meant I drove to see patients, I would bring patients in, I would take patients to the university. And so medicine in and of itself is a challenging job, but this one is an extremely difficult job. And I'm an introvert, and it's a lot of connection, a lot of talking, a lot of meeting with people. And so emotionally and mentally, that becomes a big challenge. And so I have to have my downtime and alone time. And you know, when you have the ability to travel both in the military and personally and now in Congress, you know that ability exists in one country, and that's the United States. And when you feel that deeply and sincerely about it, that you know those opportunities don't exist everywhere. So whatever talents God gives you, that you're able to fulfill that potential.
Let's talk about what role faith has in your life.
Well, I strongly believe that God puts you in places where you're supposed to be. It may not be what you want, and it may not be what you thought would happen, but you have to have that faith that things will work out as the way they are. And that doesn't excuse us from putting in the effort. And some people think you don't have to put in the effort. You have to put in the effort, you have to put in the work, and then you have to trust. And so faith is like the wind. You don't see it, but it's there. And I think what's changed in my relationship with God is that the child who asks God for things and the adult who doesn't ask but says, let me accept what your will is. I think that's the difference. You have an adult view of your relationship with God.
But you still have that childlike faith.
Absolutely.
That's all the time we have for now. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Wishing you and your family a beautifully blessed evening.